Okay, those of you who are taking a thesis seminar, I had a chance to go through the reflections for last week. And if you haven't done so already, you still may upload those reflections. If you have any questions about how to do so, I left a few videos in Google Classroom explaining step by step how to go about uploading those reflections. So again, if you have not done so already, please go ahead and upload those. But I've got a few points that I want to talk about today as I read through reflections for week 2 as we are now into week 3. The first thing I want to mention here is that some of you mentioned that as you're reading through some of your articles that you were changing the focus of your research questions, maybe your thesis statement. And this is a normal part of the process. So really, if you find yourself in a position where you have to change completely your topic, then I would like for us to have that discussion. But certainly, as you're gaining more knowledge of the literature and you're organizing your articles into different sections, a normal part of the process is to continually to check and tweak or slightly modify your research questions and thesis statement as necessary. Some of you found that it was a challenge for organizing your literature review around your research questions and your thesis statement. Again, this is to be expected. It's part of the process, and it's something that I want us to discuss and make decisions on as far as how you're organizing your articles into these main sections. Again, think of dividing up your literature review into 2 to 4 sections that best answers or addresses your thesis statement. Remember that your thesis statement directly answers or should answer your research questions. So that's how we try to think of those 3 aspects: the thesis statement, the research questions, and then the overall organization of your literature review, how we think of those 3 together in a coherent and organized fashion. Your thesis statement sets out to answer your research questions. Now, some of you mentioned that you found some studies that were longitudinal and quantitative, and most of you, if not all of you, are not doing longitudinal and quantitative studies. So the question is, can you include a longitudinal and or a quantitative study in your literature review if you're not going to do those types of studies? And the answer is yes. You can do it. Now, obviously, the methods section of those types of studies may not serve a purpose. Maybe it's not there. It's not going to be as helpful. But maybe the findings of those studies are very much related to providing support for the overall argument that you're including in your literature review. So certainly the results of those studies can be very helpful in your own literature review, but maybe the procedure is not going to be that important, or maybe it's not going to apply to your particular context, which is okay. But certainly at the end of the day, you do need to find 2 to 3 at least, 2 to 3 studies that are very much related to what you want to do, that provide perhaps some instruments that you can use for your own study, that can provide examples of procedures or ways that you can collect data that will be helpful for you. Perhaps they have certain types of participants that you can consider for your own purpose. So really the idea is that you need to have those 2 to 3 articles so that they provide a model for what you want to do for your own study. Now, I did notice that too many of you, I feel, have not uploaded anything yet to your Google Docs, so please upload whatever you have. Again, the Google Docs is there to help me see how you're progressing. Don't feel that you need to upload your final product only to the Google Docs. This totally defeats the whole purpose of why I'm setting the Google Docs up in the first place. The purpose of the Google Docs is that we can collaborate and cooperate, and we can communicate back and forth in an ongoing basis throughout the entire process from week 1 to week 16, that we have a place where we can, you can ask questions, I can respond, I can ask you questions, and we can do this outside of our one-on-one tutoring session that we have scheduled for each week. So please, if you have not done so already, please upload your information, whatever you have. You at least at this point in week 3 need to have your research questions, your thesis statement, and your main sections, your 2 to 4 main sections as a level 2 heading. I'm also encouraging everyone to want to have that information to write out your topic sentences and include those under each of the respective sections so that you basically are creating an outline of your overall organization. I think this is very important that we have a discussion about your organization before you dive into developing individual paragraphs, because that way we can kind of see where you're going. You can see as you develop each paragraph, how does that idea relate to the rest of the ideas of your overall argument. So this is the reason, the idea of using Google Docs, so that we can help, we can both work together in a more fluid basis as you develop your final text. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is that one of you mentioned that you would like, one of your goals is to finish 1 week before the actual due date of your literature review. I think that's a great idea. I would encourage everyone to try to reach that goal, because I think in fact, I know you're going to have a much better product when you finish if we have a full week of feedback and revisions before your due date. Now, having said that, I will say that after the due date that although we won't spend that much time in our tutoring sessions addressing your literature review, of course you're going to have opportunities to continue to modify and change your literature review after the due date. But all of you will receive a grade that's relevant to, that's aligned with the due date, and we'll talk more specifically about how I'll handle grades for the literature review once we get a little bit closer. But I think the main point now going into week 3 is, I think it's a great goal to have, to set up and try to finish your literature review before the due date so that you have that much more time to make revisions and I can provide feedback in our tutoring sessions. After our literature review, we're going to be spending then more time on your own study, thinking in terms of your instruments and your ways in which you're going to start collecting your data. Don't forget at this point also, and we hit week 3, that you're also, at this point, you need to have a good idea about where you want to do your study. Hopefully you've had a chance to reach out and talk to the schools and possible participants and teachers, perhaps, maybe student groups, and that you have the necessary permissions if it's necessary. Some schools ask for permission and will ask for a letter to basically authorize you to do your study. So just double check and make sure that you have what you need so that when we do begin the data collection process, you're ready to go. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions or issues, feel free to, of course, come by my office or send me an email or message in Google Classroom.